What's up, plant lovers? Welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be sharing more plants that like to dry out between watering. I don't know about you, but I really do love plants that have simple care needs. So I tend to surround myself with mostly easy care plants, and all of the plants on this list do like their soil to get really dry before you water again. So if this suits your plant parenting style, then let's get stuck into the list. I'm going to start with the Jade Gollum. This is one of my favourite succulents. It's a little bit different to the Crassula ovata in that it has these different shaped leaves. I kind of love the way it grows, and this one also turns into a sort of tree form as it matures too. You get a kind of trunk on there. This is probably one of my easiest succulents. It doesn't mind drying out, which is a good job because that's what this video is about. It's pretty easy going. Occasionally I do see a mealybug on this plant. It is kind of prone to them. For some reason it seems to be a buffet item for them. They love it. But so long as you keep your eye on there and kind of have a look in all the kind of folds of it there, usually you can spot them pretty easily, and all I do is dab a bit of rubbing alcohol on an earbud, and then I just dab it straight onto the mealybug. So it doesn't really bother me, but that's the only thing I'd say about this one. Other than that, it's super easy. Mine actually hasn't had mealybugs for quite some time. The last time I unalived a mealybug was quite a number of months ago, so maybe I've got them all this time, I don't know. But sometimes one just pops up and I have no idea where it comes from. So yeah, that's the Jade Gollum. This next plant is the Ficus Elastica Robusta. True to its name, it is very robust. Now, it did take me a little while to learn this, but rubber plants do like to dry out before they get watered again. So I've started implementing this on all the types of rubber plants I have, including this one. And this one is really happy when I let it dry out. At the moment, as you can see, I've been branching this one. You can see it's got this new branch growing here. And I've also been adding propagations that I took back into the pot to try and make a fuller plant. And the other thing that I should mention as well as letting these plants dry out between watering, you should also make sure to use a well-draining potting mix. Use plenty of items such as perlite, orchid bark. Those are the two that I use. You can also use other things too, like pumice. Pumice is a bit bigger than perlite, but I usually get perlite and orchid bark because it's just really readily available to me, and then I just mix that in with some cocoa coir as well. And making sure you have a well-draining potting mix, just make sure that when you do water your plant, make sure you give it a really thorough drink, water it all the way through till it comes out the drainage holes, and with that well-draining potting mix, all the excess water will come out. And then all you've got to do is wait for it to dry and do it again. Really easy. Plant care doesn't have to be complicated. I like it when it's just really simple. And speaking of rubber plants, the next plant I want to share with you is another type of rubber plant. This is the Ficus Elastica Belize ruby, a real mouthful. I usually just call it the Ficus ruby for short. So this guy, again, loves to dry out, loves a well-draining potting mix, and the only difference with this one is you can see it has some variegation on the leaves. It's kind of got a red tinge to it. It's a little bit similar to the Ficus teneki, I guess you could say, only it's got more of that kind of reddy pink hue. And I recently bought this one, and a funny thing I noticed after I'd repotted this one when I examined it was that there's a little cut in one of the leaves. It must have just split or something in the garden centre. It's just a tiny one, and it looks like someone has glued it back together. That just really made me laugh. I guess someone maybe thought, I'll glue that back together and no one will notice. I don't know. Next up I have the snake plant, and I know we hear a lot about snake plants on YouTube and maybe some of us are bored of them, but I really love snake plants. I think they're really beautiful, And this is kind of the standard one that you'll see. I can't actually remember what variety this is, but it definitely loves to dry out. This one causes me absolutely zero trouble. I've repotted it once in the time I've had it, just to refresh the soil a bit. And you can basically treat this plant like a succulent, make sure it gets lots of bright light. And I know these plants often get kind of portrayed as low light plants, and whereas they are tolerant of low light, I will really emphasize the word tolerant, because snake plants actually in reality would prefer bright indirect light. In fact, they can actually handle a bit of direct sun too. I wouldn't recommend putting yours in direct sun if it's not been used to it, especially if you've had it in a low light area. However, they are light loving plants, and if you've noticed that your snake plant isn't growing very well because it's in a darker spot, move it into bright indirect light and see what you think, because honestly you'll notice it growing much quicker. It's surprising how much quickly you notice the change when you move them from low light to a higher light area. And following on from that, I actually want to show you another snake plant, because we often think of the kind of snake plant that I just showed you as the standard snake plant that we see a lot, but there are actually loads and loads of varieties of these plants. And this is one of them. This is the Sansevieria Fernwood. I'm not sure if it's been reclassified as Dracaena, this one. I think some of them got reclassified. I can't keep up with that, but I'm just going to call it the Sansevieria Fernwood for now. But this one is really cool, I think, and similarly to the other plant that I just showed you, I did previously have this one in slightly less light. It wasn't a low light area, but it was more medium light. So what I did was I also moved this one into bright indirect light, and would you know, I've got some new fingers. I call them fingers because they look like witches' fingers to me. So honestly guys, move your snake plants from low light to bright indirect light. I promise you, you won't regret it. You'll start seeing growth and you'll be really happy you did. But yeah, this one also likes to dry out. I let this one dry out completely. They don't like to be in pots that are too big either, snake plants, so make sure you do it quite snug to the roots. And I always find, I don't know if you find this, but they usually have quite small root systems too. I remember the first time I repotted a snake plant, I thought to myself, is this normal? So I had to look it up, and it seems like it is normal. So yeah, Sansevieria Fernwood. And then let's just carry on with the snake plant binge that we're having here. I'm going to share with you another snake plant, because this one also is really awesome. He's never any trouble. He's the cutest little thing ever. When I got him, he was just this one leaf. In fact, my husband picked him and called him Leaf because he only had one leaf. And he's since grown a little friend in there, which is really nice. But again, this one, as I say, it's known as the whale fin snake plant, and this one can get quite big too. You might have seen them in the garden centres with the really big shaped fins, but they're usually sold in just one fin shape because it's some kind of novelty, I think. But they do grow more leaves in there too, given enough light, as I said before. And again, this little guy, he does like light too. He likes to dry out between watering. He likes lots of light, and he will thrive for you. But I think this one's kind of interesting, as I say, because we often think of the first snake plant that I showed you as the only snake plant out there, but there are so many varieties, and although I've only got 3 or 4 varieties at the moment, I'd definitely love to collect more. I think they are well underrated, these plants. But yeah, I'd highly recommend this one. Put him in a sunny spot and he will grow way better for you. Next one I want to share with you is an Aglaonema, and this is called the Aglaonema White Joy, and for obvious reasons. It's absolutely gorgeous. You look at it and you do see that wonderful white joy. And what's really surprised me with this plant is it hasn't browned at all, because when I bought it I thought surely those leaves are going to brown eventually because they're mostly white, but no, they have not browned. So I'm really happy. I do let this one dry out all the way before I water it, and it seems happy with that. That's just what I do, and I've found that this plant is thriving. It's not got any crispy bits whatsoever. It's growing new leaves. So that's why I can say to you, that's what I do. I do let it dry out and it seems fine. And generally Aglaonemas are quite easy plants. So there is actually a red version of this. I think it's called the Red Joy. I would love to get one of those. I've never seen them in garden centres, but if I do, I shall snap one up. But yeah, this one's just really unique, I think. And if you're looking for something that's easy but kind of nice and unique looking, then Aglaonema White Joy, go for it. I promise you, you won't regret it. This plant is so, so easy. So next I had to include the Monstera Deliciosa, because Monstera Deliciosa, although we've all got one in our homes pretty much these days and they're very common, they're really, really brilliant plants and they're popular for a reason, guys. They love to dry out between watering. They don't want to be in a pot that's too big. A lot of people make the mistake of putting them in a huge pot because they're quite big plants. Just make sure you put them in a pot that is relative to the size of the root ball, not to the size of the plant. And yeah, let this guy dry out between watering. He loves to dry out. Then give him a good drink and then just repeat. And as I said before, Monstera Deliciosa really is a wonderful plant. It doesn't matter whether you're a beginner or you're experienced. I guarantee you, if you get one of these, you'll realise why they're so popular. They do take up quite a lot of space eventually, as they can grow quite big, so make sure you do have room for it. But yeah, I think everyone should have one of these, and you don't need to get a variegated version either. The green ones are just as nice, I think, and they're less trouble. I hear the variegated ones get all sorts of problems like root rot and slow growing and all that, but this one, fairly fast growing, I'd say, depending on the conditions you give it. Again, sometimes this plant is touted as a low light plant, but honestly, give it bright and direct light. That will make it grow better for you, I promise you. So the next plant I'd like to share is my Philodendron Ring of Fire. This one again, let it dry out, it's going to be absolutely fine, but I've just been sharing this one with everyone I can at the moment. I've been recommending it to anyone I possibly can because I really, really love it. It's such a unique plant, and a lot of the easy care plants that you find, they're not very unique and they're quite common, but if you're looking for one that's got that kind of variegation, then the Philodendron Ring of Fire, highly recommend. Give it a nice chunky potting mix again. Philodendrons in general like to have plenty of drainage materials, like, as I said before, orchid bark, perlite, you know, that kind of thing. Make sure it's nice and chunky and well draining. This is to help the roots breathe as well as to let the water drain out. So just remember, your plant needs light, water, oxygen. It does need to breathe. Those roots do need to breathe, and when they can't breathe, when they're in a really dense soggy soil, that's why they rot, you see. So yeah, I always repot my plants. There are exceptions, but when I get new plants, I pop them into a new potting mix that's nice and chunky. Then I know that they are going to be fine with the way I care for plants, but I'd recommend doing that because a lot of the time when you buy a new plant, it's got really dense soil and it gets soggy so quickly. But yeah, going off on a bit of a tangent there, let this one dry out, give it a good drink, and as I said before, that's all you got to do. Bright and direct light, job's a good one. The next one I want to share with you guys is the Epipremnum Pinnatum Marble Queen, and this one actually came out of quarantine today because I tend to put my plants in a quarantine space when I get them. I try to anyway, provided they're not too big, and you know, I give them a scrub down and a wash, and then I just keep them out of the way of my other plants for a little while and examine them every day for any possible bugs. And this one's just come out of jail today, so it's allowed in here with all the other plants. But yeah, Epipremnum Pinnatum Marble Queen. This one, not only does it have really awesome variegation, if you let it climb up a pole, it will actually fenestrate. So that's making me want to put mine on a pole. I haven't done it yet because I recently repotted it and I don't want to disturb it again so far. A lot of you have said to me that this one is really slow growing for you. I can't really comment on that yet because I haven't had it long enough, but I can say that it's got really simple care needs. Again, just that chunky potting mix I said before, let it dry out between watering and give it that bright indirect light. Again, easy. So another plant I've been talking about and recommending any chance I get is this Pothos, Neon Pothos, and I just love this one. It's so gorgeous, and this one I can say is a fast grower, and again this one likes good bright indirect light. It doesn't want to be in the dark, even though it will tolerate the dark, but don't put it in the dark, it won't grow very well for you. Again, just let it dry out, give it another watering, plonk it on a shelf somewhere, and it's just going to grow beautifully for you. And of course you can have this one trailing or climbing as well. I've got mine trailing at the moment because I kind of like to have some trailing plants at the moment on my shelves. But since I got this one, all I did was put it into the new potting mix, give it a good water, and then, as I say, I've just been letting it dry out. That's it. I just leave it on its shelf and it's just putting leaf after leaf. And it's really cool. I just love this one. The colour is so fresh, so springtime. It gives me that springtime feeling. I really love it. It's one of those plants that really brings nature indoors. I mean, all plants do, which is why we love them, but they're great for the mental health plants. Absolutely brilliant. Thanks so much for watching today, guys. I do really appreciate you being here. And until next time, look after your plants and look after yourself.